when I had a disempowering birth with my son, I started to doubt my own instincts and start doubting myself as a mom. So I would be defending my choices to my family and friends in terms of what was working for me, what wasn't working, and I felt very disempowered in that too. So this shows up in very, very often in many aspects of your life. It can happen within your career. You suddenly have a different view of your career and you think that you're doubting yourself. Or it shows up in your relationship. Your partner wasn't there for you in the way that you needed them to be, and now that has colored your relationship. Birth trauma is it's just one of those things that just absolutely devastates families. It devastates society. It just devastates you, and it makes you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, that you don't know your own body. And the thing about this time of year is it's induction season and it's cesarean season. And that doesn't mean that inductions and cesareans are necessary. It means that they're more likely to happen. Around this time of year, we see the highest level of inductions and highest rate of cesareans coinciding with that, because profit, convenience, liability, getting you through the doors of the maternity care system and out as fast as possible before the holidays is something that really motivates a lot of people. So how do you avoid this? Well, I am about to tell you, because here's what I often see is that moms right now are being pressured to induce. They're being pressured to show progress. They're being told that their baby is too big or too small, or they're being told they have low fluid or too much fluid, or they're being told that it's just the holidays and there's going to be no beds. So they're really pressuring you with their own agenda. So how do you avoid this? Well, first of all, you don't want to have a single cervical check, especially at this time of the year. First of all, it doesn't tell you anything. Your cervix is not a crystal ball. I've said this many times. It's true. I've experienced it with myself, even as someone who had been in the birth community for a number of years already and understood my cervix wasn't a crystal ball. I caved in the system and I asked for a cervix check, and they said I was 6 centimeters, and I thought, cool, I'm going to have my baby tonight. But my cervix said, nope, I don't like this check, and I'm closing up, and labor stopped. And then I opened up on my own, and I don't even know how dilated I was at X number of times because I didn't call the midwife until I was pushing. So you don't actually need to have your cervix checked ever. The only time that it's useful is if you have a medical reason for an induction, that you have already decided that induction is going to be the best choice for you, and you want to know if your cervix is favorable for that induction. Other than that, it undermines your confidence. So if your care provider is like, oh, you're only 1 centimeter and you're 39 weeks, what's that going to do to your confidence? Well, you're going to wonder, am I ever going to dilate? I see this so often inside the Facebook groups where mom is like, I'm 1 centimeter dilated. How do I get dilated more? And I'm like, you need to relax, and you need to just accept that your baby is going to come when your baby's ready. And that at 39 weeks, if your cervix is 1 centimeter, it means nothing. And even if you're in early labor and your cervix is 1 centimeter, it means nothing. You could open up all the way up to 10 all of a sudden and just have a baby. Or you could be walking around at 6 centimeters for weeks and nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden baby comes out when baby's ready. The thing is that your cervix does not need to be checked. So if your care provider is one of those that's pushing cervix checks, you really want to know why that is. And you want to be questioning it. And when in doubt, just keep your pants on. They can't check your cervix if you're wearing pants. They can't do anything. And if they say it's hospital policy, well, again, that's their policy. It has nothing to do with you. And even if you're afraid, well, they might get mad at me. Well, who cares? Who cares? Because the fact is that, do you want them to like you, or do you want to have an empowered birth? Because you can fire your care provider even in labor. You can fire your care provider as you're pushing. If at any point you don't feel comfortable and you feel I can birth this baby myself, that is when you get your power back. And I'm telling you, you can birth this baby yourself. You don't need to have a single cervix check. Next one, don't be afraid of a big baby, okay? Because oftentimes the fear of a big baby is what causes more of the problems than an actual big baby. I have a friend who had a baby that was 10 pounds at home. And so another friend of mine who's a doula, she had a client who went to 43 weeks, chose to induce, and had a 11-pound baby with just a mild shoulder dystocia that like solved itself and no tears at all, 11 pounds, okay? So do not fear the big baby. You're actually more likely to tear and more likely to have complications if you're induced with a big baby than if you are going into a physiological labor yourself. So the next one I really want you to be aware of is when your care provider is just outright saying, well, it's the holidays and you want your baby before Christmas, don't you? You know, this is really, really tempting. And I get it, because who doesn't want a cute little newborn? But here's the thing, your due date is a guess date. So while your care provider may say that you're 39 weeks, if you naturally gestate to 42 weeks or 43 weeks or even just 41 weeks, your baby has not signaled yet to your body that it's time to start labor. Your baby has a surfactant in their lungs that develops, a protein that triggers labor. So until that protein is developed, your baby's lungs are not mature enough. So what happens if you induce and force your baby out before their lungs are mature enough is now you've got a baby that may not have the respiratory ability to be able to breathe on the outside without possibly having issues. And it's cold and flu season. So now you're taking this new baby that you've induced and brought out early, and you're passing it around all your relatives. Their immune system may not be ready yet. Their digestive tract may not be ready yet. They may have breastfeeding issues. You want your baby to be putting on the weight at the end of the pregnancy as well, because that's going to insulate them and keep them protected. So there's like, I think 40 reasons to go the full 40 weeks. But the fact is that it can go past 40 weeks because your normal might be 41 weeks, or it might be 41 and a half weeks, or it might be 42 weeks. And some moms, as I said, can even go to 43 weeks, and it's perfectly normal. And when you're taking a baby that's supposed to be, their timeline is 44 weeks, and you go and induce them at 38 weeks because your care provider likes to induce everybody at 38 or 39 weeks, you've just taken that baby 4 weeks early and then put them in an environment inside of your family where there's more likely to be a spread of germs. You don't want that. So even though it kind of sucks to be pregnant still in the holidays, it's going to suck even more if your baby gets sick or if your baby's just not doing well and you're staying up late at night trying to get this new baby to feed, and it's not going very well because they weren't ready to be on the outside yet. They weren't ready for that 4th trimester to start. And now they're technically term, but it's very early term, and you just have a whole bunch more things to deal with. So please think about this. Think about the long-term consequences when you're choosing induction or when your care provider is pushing these things, like choosing a cervical check or choosing to have additional monitoring or choosing to just go through the routine of what the hospital does. Because here's the next one. If you induce and you're a first-time mom and your cervix is not favorable, it's 3 times more likely that it's going to be a failed induction. The drugs are going to fail to work because your body's not ready, it's not responding, and you're going to end up in a C-section. So now you're recovering over the holidays from a C-section that you did not intend to have. So when you're really thinking long-term, it kind of seems obvious now that you really want to set those intentions. So again, set your intentions of what you want for your birth and what you want your postpartum to look like and what you would like the holiday season to look like with your baby and without your baby. because it's toss up. Your baby will decide when they're ready to be born. The last one, of course, is that if you go into labor in the hospital and you actually are in spontaneous labor, they may try to speed that up because, again, they want to go home for their holiday feast or whatever, and they may start to try to slip Pitocin. They may suggest to break your waters, and it's the same basic thing. There's a cascade of interventions happening here. First of all, your waters do not have to break in order for you to birth your baby. In fact, there's something called a call birth where the baby is actually born inside the amniotic sac. It's really cool. I have tried it with my daughter. It turns out it didn't work out too well. My waters released just as she was crowning. But the fact is that your waters may not release until just before the head is born, and that's perfectly okay. Now, if you have the waters broken just because your care provider is impatient, that can lead to complications. It can lead to more painful contractions. It can lead to your baby not being able to get into the right position, and then you may end up in a C-section. Pitocin, I've talked about this. Pitocin is the devil drug. You do not want to be on Pitocin and trying to labor because it's like one contraction after another, after another, after another. I've had clients, especially my client Rebecca, who had this amazing vaginal birth after 2 cesareans back in October. And she said, you know, like it was very odd, even with my transition of 2 minutes apart, it was still easier than when I had Pitocin because I had a break. I was able to rest. I was able to sleep. And I was not able to do that with Pitocin. I'm like, yeah, I told you. That's why I said you were able to birth your baby very easily, especially at home, because you've already experienced Pitocin and you know what that does to you. So this is going to be a walk in the park because you were already able to get through without any drugs for such a long time. And here's the other thing. When they say that an induction at 39 weeks prevents a C-section, the ARRIVE trial actually doesn't really specify that it doesn't have C-sections. It's just it's like a 2% difference. So between the inductions that happened at 41 weeks and the inductions that happened at 39 weeks, there was a 2% less, like 2% decrease of women having C-sections. That's it. Are you really going to risk 2%? Because they didn't study spontaneous labor in that study. They were just studying between induction at 41 weeks or induction at 39 weeks. And then that group of women was actually a lot smaller by the end because people dropped out of the study, people went into spontaneous labor and they were no longer a good fit. And anyone who's choosing induction voluntarily may not even be planning a physiological birth in the first place. So there's so many variables within that, and that ARRIVE trial probably does not even apply to you. And I really want you prepared. I want you to know that you can say no to cervical checks. I want you to have that information ingrained in your head so that when your care provider inevitably tries to bring it up, you already know exactly what you need to say. I have to go, but I love you. Have a wonderful winter solstice. Set your intentions. Again, to set your intention, it's just as simple as deciding, what do I want my birth to look like? What do I want my postpartum to look like? What do I want for myself in terms of planning this pregnancy, that if you're earlier on, or if you're planning to get pregnant, what do you want? I will see you soon. Okay, bye.